Hello, my lovely people. Welcome back to Procrastinate with Books. Today, we are here to share a brief history of all the reads that I've had in the last 1 month. That is the July monthly wrap up. Taking my learnings from the last 2 months, I did a pretty well job at selecting what kind of books I want to read this month, and that is why for most of the books I felt a little good, if not the best, and some of them were really mind blowing. If you know the one that I'm talking about because you follow me on Instagram and I've shared my reviews already in there, so you can check those as well. But I'm eager to share my detailed review and all that I felt about reading these books with you guys, so hop into the video quickly. Before that, quickly grab something to eat or drink, whatever you prefer, because as you know, monthly wrap-ups are a lengthy deal of time. Starting off with the category of good for one-time read, the first book I have is My Life Next Door. This is a contemporary romance book, and for a strange reason, I found this way better than Happy Place. Happy Place, you remember my last month's wrap-up? A total reading disaster for me, but nevertheless, this one was much better in terms of the storyline and plot and the twist and the realistic behavior of people and other things. But first, talking about the story, this is about two neighbors and a boy and a girl living next door to each other who have basically never interacted with one another because they have never been on a friendly or any sort of terms to each other as neighbors. They simply exist in their own worlds and never interact within, unless one summer they happen to interact and there are sparks flying in, and from there the whole tale takes away into a deep down journey of these two characters. There are fond family vibes, there are friendship vibes, there are high school drama and all those friendship little details that actually makes the book worth reading. Overall, good vibes, believable storyline, a main storyline, sub storyline, and everything that makes it worth the while of at least one time reading if you are really into contemporary romances. Next, we have Ezra's Ghost, which is a fictional short story book, and it has multiple short stories compiled around a singular theme of Ezra, and that is where all the stories are somehow revolving around. The most impactful one was the first story that actually got me absolutely into the book while reading. The rest of them were a bit passerby, but I'll give that to the book that each story is of a different length, so you might connect with one and you might not connect with the other. Some stories are so short that you can finish it in like just 10 minutes or something and one story will be done. When you move towards the end of the book though, you actually get to understand what is the interconnection of all these stories compared to the initial plot, and that's where the whole book will actually make sense. So if you in case decide to start on this book, make sure you actually finish it too. Next, we have Macaroons Can Be Murder, which is the epitome of a cozy mystery book series, and this one is totally a cover and a title pick for me. Look how cute the title is. Who wouldn't want to read this book? And while I say cozy mysteries, the theme line, plot line is absolutely the same like you have in those cozy mysteries where you have a person running a bakery, a murder in front of the house or backside of the bakery, something around as alley, and then they are investigating those things so that they don't land up in trouble, and towards the end they themselves land up in trouble, and that's how things go from there. But overall, same plot line, not so much of a unique story, but good for a one-time run. The Stars of Mount Quix is actually a combination of fantasy plus romance, so it's a romantasy with a trope of LGBTQP. And while we are talking about the storylines, it's mainly about the two sisters who are poles apart from each other, and they happen to land into a town where they were supposed to be with their parents for a vacation, but they ended up ditching them like usual. And this town is not its usual self. Seems to be covered with some sort of a mist throughout the town, which never seems to be lifting up. And there they find themselves in this cursed, wretched place. And the quarrels begin between the sisters, and somehow one of them gets missing the next day. The elder one has to go ahead and find her, and there she discovers this strange mountain with its stranger forest and strangest creatures residing within. And that's where the whole story, I thought, is done revolving itself and revealing all the key things about itself. But no, There is definitely more to come, and an adventure has suddenly begun, and to know more, you need to read the book. This book, I'll tell you what went wrong here because this was supposed to be a 5 out of 5 star for me. But let me tell you about the story first. It's about Lena, whose younger sister just dies up randomly, and she decides to find out the real culprit behind her sister's untimely death. So she decides to go to Paris, meet up this Leon's instructor who was there. I think her name was Vandeline or something. Yeah, probably that. And they both then start working together, and they discover a secret society that is there in London, which is run by only men. And they are trying to leverage the deaths of different rich people and do certain things behind the backs of other, and they are doing some shameful acts on the name of seances, and they are trying to unreveal them to the society, and that's how the story is going on here. What went wrong? Well, I loved this author's writing style, and I still loved it because it also had a dual timeline story within the story as well. And I loved it, but somehow the story did not have that kind of a pull the way The Lost Apothecary had, and it was such a beautiful book that I read. I think that was this author's debut work, and that was one of the reasons why I actually had so much of expectations from this book. Touche, that did not come to pass. Fight to the Dog is a fiction horror story, and the storyline here revolves around two friends who went on a trip, were coming back to their homes when their car actually gets breakdown on a stranded street, and that's when they have to call the repair shop and get to stay in a hotel nearby until and unless their cars get repaired. And the hotel in which they are staying is fine, but the room in which they are staying seems to be haunted, which is room number 9. And there you have it. That's the basic plot of the story, and then they just start to uncover things and reveal different things and stories, which I think you should better explore by reading ahead rather than me telling it to you and making it a spoiler. But that's the gist of the story. What I did like in this book was the multiple point of narration style that the author had. The writing was fine. What I did not enjoy a lot was the basic standard plot line of a horror story, standard streets, haunted hotels, and all those things. I was expecting a little niche from this book, and it delivered that niche, and that is why it felt a little better than the London Sea Society for me. Coming out on September 5, this is the second book in the Time Jumper series, and this one was a fab writing, and I'm a big time fan of time jumps. So obviously I had to pick this up. It is also based on historical notes because then again you are doing time jumping into the past scenario, so how else would it work? When I saw a few people calling this book Celtic Deception or Celtic Deception, I was really confused. So I'll stick to Celtic until and unless I derive further proof for Celtic Deception wala pronunciation. So we'll just stick to what we are doing so far. And about the book, I think discussing the storyline will be considered as a spoiler version for book one. So rather, I'll just tell you what I actually felt about this book. Now that I'm a bit more educated towards Norse mythology, I was easily able to make the context of ruins and everything. If you are looking into a lot of fiction, fantasy towards the Norse category, I think it will make sense that you educate yourself a little bit around these mythologies before jumping into such books. Otherwise, they'll just be a standard story to you and wouldn't make that much of an impact compared to if you already know what it actually tends to mean towards those ruins, what those ruins stand for, and what is their significance. Then you'll make sense better. What I like the best in the whole series is Sam's character. I think she is just a wonderful person despite all she has been through. She's just too upbeat and very smart because of those. Whereas Dan, if I talk about earlier, I used to sympathize with him because he was not that educated towards certain things. But now that I'm saying, I think a character also needs to develop his intuitiveness with time once you have faced certain obstacles, challenges, or whether I should say plots, treachery, etc. You should be well aware about any future incoming plots in that category, right? You shouldn't be foolish enough to be laid off by someone's small talks. So that was a bit something that was disappointing for me, but other than that, most of the story was really well. Now moving ahead into the category of some really good finds, the first book that I have for you is Queen Hereafter. This is supposed to be a Macbeth retelling. For those of you who have not read Macbeth in your childhood during school programs and everything, it's actually about a king who was prophesized by a witch that he would become the ruler of Scotland one day, and driven by his ambition and his wife's ambition, they become the king and queen, but they somehow destroy a lot more. That's in a nutshell the story. And this, supposed to be a retelling of it, was moreover received by me in a before story of the becoming of Lady Macbeth. And Lady Macbeth is the key character in the book over here. The book takes us to the eventful years of our main protagonist, who in her childhood days were prophesied by her grandmother that she would one day become a really good and greatest ruler of Alba. Now, because of that, she has developed a stern determination within herself to basically raise herself to a standard of becoming a queen. And that is the whole story of how she actually does anything and everything to reach for a power of position. It's the story about ambition, power, politics, and what a woman might do. Confetti Realms is a graphic novel that I read for the Summerween week this month, and I have done a separate blog, so I will link it up somewhere in the eye, and you can check the detailed one around the readathon and everything details around it. The story basically is about four teenagers who decides to carry their after party in a graveyard to celebrate Halloween on Halloween's night. What they did not speculate was to be teleported away into a different fantasy world and come across a demon who has now tasked them to collect all his debts from the strangest creatures living in that world. Like, I was absolutely, first of all, the fan of the artwork this book had. The graphic illustrations was so beautiful. I don't have enough words to describe them. And apart from that, the plot of Halloween story, I think this would be a perfect book to basically read either in the Summerween or in your Spooktober season, when the spooky season on a high rise again. I think it's a wonderful find. The Curse of Saints is one of those fantasy kingdom vibes kind of a book that actually has kings, magic, realms, kingdoms, and queens ruling over and shooting out orders for people, killing, etc. And amongst them is Taka protagonist Aya, who has happened to cultivate certain kind of powers within her. Now half of the people are very afraid to confront her, the other half are scared for her security, and that's where people start to take decisions about her rather than asking her and informing her and letting her take the decisions of her life. And from there, the queen has put a bounty on her head, and things go right south direction, and that's where the story will take you. Now, I personally enjoy more of characters who are very fierce and breathing fire dragon kind of stealth in them, rather than acting like a damsel in distress. And that's what happened here. That's why I actually loved the protagonist and the decisions that she was making for herself, which made up to the certain plot lines of the book that did not work out well, but overall a quite grasping tale. I was thinking about the story for days after reading it, so that in itself is a statement. This book is one of my most unexpected reads this month, and I was not at all expecting what will go in there. This was supposed to be a cozy mystery, but a very different kind. The creatures in this world are all supernatural creatures living, cohabitating Earth with humans and living in their own zones and doing the normal jobs and everything. And that's where our main protagonist comes into the picture, Iris, who happened to have inherited her aunt's great home, the purple one, about which the whole story is. And her life before that was all in shackles and fumbles, so this one seems to be a upbeat. And now she has decided to turn it out into a sort of Airbnb so that she can actually earn something from it and gradually do the repair things. Side, we have Ali, who has actually made up a fortune by building up apps for himself, and he had sort of a crush on Iris in childhood and he was really grateful to her, and now that she's in front of him, they happen to have sort of a misunderstanding, and the next thing that they know is he's renting her Airbnb and helping her run the overall business. I have like a tons of things that I would like to talk about in this book, but I just made a list of highlights that I absolutely loved, so I'm going to share those with you. First is the font family vibes that this book creates. It's absolutely whimsical and gorgeous to read. I'll just tell you that. Then there is the misfits trope in the book where all the misfits of the society are coming together and coexisting, with felt like a little overlaid path, but obviously it's a cozy mystery. You really don't have to expect any kind of complexities from the book. So that was the second thing. Then there was a diverse arena of creatures and characters that were introduced into the books, like bats, Dracula's face, fairies, and whatnot. So all these characters are here in a metaphorical way, resembling the LGBTQ community and the different spectrums, and it's okay for all of them to exist, and the world might try to bring you down and judge you because you are a witch or a werewolf, etc., but you don't really have to give a damn to them. I also read Fourth Wing, but since I've already done a full-fledged video on that book, I'll skip the review for now. You can check it in the other video where I've given you a intrinsic outlook of things that actually work, not work, storyline, everything for you in a breakdown format. So you can check that out. Now this particular one is a little complex world build up, consisting of a world where there are two ruler gods. One is the god of life, the other is the god of death, and they are sort of gifting certain humans with their abilities to tune in their songs and rhythms of life or death. And our main protagonist seems to be the only person who can do both in this arena. On the daytime, she is a sister who sings the song of life and help people heal. On the night time, she has a separate personality altogether and becomes the most feared assassin in the whole city. Summarizing my experience in 3 points to you would be character development, world build up, another, writing style, a little, and that's about it. This book, I don't care what age group you fall in, 20 something, 30 something, 80 something, you need to read this book. This book is for everybody and you will have a lot of fun reading this book. Of course, it's an adult book, so 20 something plus can read it, but otherwise, amazing plotline, amazing conveying messaging ability in this book, and oh my god, what a hilarious experience. In a human life, we have certain standard level of expectations that every human is supposed to fulfill. you know Complete your education by this age, then get married by X age, have kids by Y age, maintain your physique, do certain things, hobbies, classes, parties, blah blah blah. And all those standard divisions that we have created might not actually work out for everybody, and most of us would be juggling between the age groups, deciding to do what in which particular one. Someone would get married, have children earlier in age, and pursue to do their education later, while someone would be more career preferred in the initial age groups and decided to give the marriage a hard pass, I would say. And it's different for each one of us, and that's what this whole book is about, that if life gives you lemon, you know what to do with them. Our next book, The Nine Lives of Bianca Moon, falls in the category of fantasy, satire, humorous, if that makes any sense, because it's obviously very humorous, but in a sarcastic way. And the story of the book is in a little fantastical world builder kind of a thing, where the cats and dogs are the only two creatures existing in their worlds, and they seems to be doing all sorts of things that a normal human would do in their world, getting up, dressing up, going to jobs, getting educated, crimes, and polices and sheriffs and community centers and everything that a normal human world has, they have it in their world. But except the thing that it's just cats and dogs that exist, and the phenomenal concept, the 9 lives of a cat, is implemented beautifully in a book. And there is this two couples, a dog and a cat, who are supposed to be married soon. And as soon as the guy decides, I mean the dog decides to propose the cat, he suddenly has an uneventful death. And though people think that it was an accident, but the cat really seems to feel that it wasn't, and that's where Bianca, the cat, decides to investigate what really happened. I never thought or envisioned myself reading such kind of a book, but I'm so glad I did. Now, the next book that I have is Deeper Mindfulness. It's a non-fiction, and I rated this book 5 out of 5 star because it was absolutely mind-blowing to read. I don't have a better what's it word. I seems to be on a lack of words a lot today. I shouldn't be doing this review. Any which ways, this book is a wholesome 8-week guided program that actually helps you cultivate a deeper mindfulness by understanding the feel tone concept. And the greatest part is not just that this book has a week over week breakup, but it also has a daily, day to day kind of a exercise, that what you needs to do on day 1, day 2, day 3 for the first week, the second week, etc. It is a truly guided approach. And what's even better, that it doesn't feel like, okay, do this, do that, do that. It's more of a storytelling kind of a concept. So each chapter that you start with actually starts with a story first, and then it will come to the conclusion. The way they actually teach children, that you will narrate the story and add towards the end, so what's the moral of the story, this. That's how this book actually approaches an adult, and it's really a great reading experience. As well as when I'm actually trying to implement it the best I can, I'm feeling pretty good. And now that you can see on the screen here, I've talked about my least rated book first, in the order of the most rated book down to Deeper Mindfulness. And that's how I basically felt. Now you can see that I read a lot of fantasy this month, a lot of horror spooky reads as well. That's primarily because of Summerween, but otherwise I read 4 books less than last month, but I'm still feeling pretty good because none of these actually fall to a 2 star or 3 star category. So 3 star and above is still sound for me. I'm happy to give them a chance and discover what they are trying to tell me. So that's about it, how I felt this month, and I hope you had a lovely time watching them. Do let me know if you are planning to read any of these books, especially this one down here, Deeper Mindfulness. I think people who love nonfiction should give this book a try. It is really very calming to read it, and I did have a wonderful time reading all these books. And that, my friends, would be all I had to say for you guys. I'll catch up with you soon in my next video. Until then, keep your coffee strong and your TBR long. Goodbye.